This conference will now be recorded.
Right. So in the last class, guys, we have learned how to perform the installation of Nessus application. How many of you have completed that? Anyone who has any questions regarding this, the installation of Nessus? Okay, assuming no questions, let's get started with the scanning part today. So again, in order to access your Nessus application from your browser, you just go to the certain URL, https colon double forward slash localhost colon 8834. That's the default port on which your Nessus application runs on your system. You will not have any desktop icon for Nessus, so you will have to bookmark this URL, guys, okay, in order to access Nessus every single time. So when you hit enter, you will get a login screen as such, and you can log in with your default credentials, username admin, and the password that you created when you initiated the Nessus installation. Okay. And once you log into your Nessus, you should be getting a message here saying plugins are done compiling. Okay. And once the plugins are compiled successfully, you get these options to click called create a new scan. And you can see these are all the scan templates available in Nessus. So there's a host discovery scan, something like your ping scan and nmap to figure out what devices are available in your network. Then you have a network scan. This is like a version scan to figure out in your network what all devices exist, and on those devices what services are running with what versions. But to get a vulnerability scan, you have to run the advanced scan here. So there are two scan types again, advanced scan and advanced dynamic scan. One is an offline scan and one is an online scan. So again, what I mean by offline is whatever plugins are downloaded on your system locally for the Nessus application, it uses those existing plugins and checks for vulnerabilities. So if I click on advanced scan here, you can see there's a tab called plugins. When I click on that, these are all the plugins that are downloaded. So if you notice, there are checks for vulnerabilities on every single endpoint. It checks for CentOS devices, CGI devices, Cisco devices, databases, for denial of service attacks, for DNS servers, for firewalls, even for Windows as well. If you scroll down, there's Windows here. So for Windows alone, it has around 6,881 plugins, as you can see. If I click on this tab of Windows, you can see these are all the plugins available. Okay, so it is scanning every single application for every vulnerability. So as small as 7-zip to as big as Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Photoshop, etc. Okay, so as you can see, these are all the plugins available for scanning every single application which has been released as a vulnerability. Okay, so again, it is available. Again, your Nessus application is capable of scanning every single website or every single web server, Windows client operating system device, Linux systems, network-related devices, firewalls, routers, FTP servers, DNS servers, every single thing. Okay, so again, these are all the plugins downloaded locally on your machine. Now, if your Nessus installation is quite old and if you don't have the latest plugins, you can either update them or go for a dynamic scan. Dynamic scan is where it gets the plugins dynamically from the internet. Okay, so you can configure a dynamic plugin scan without recommendations through the online servers. Okay, so it uses the latest plugins available on the Nessus servers online and then runs it. But definitely, offline scan runs much faster compared to online scan because you have all the plugins locally stored on your machine. Okay. Then there's a malware scan. So this is not related to vulnerabilities, but to check if your system contains any malwares, just like your Defender scan. Then there's a web application scan. Then there's scans for popular plugins or popular vulnerabilities. Okay, Log4j, ransomware attacks, WannaCry ransomware. So whatever popular vulnerabilities existed in the past, there's a specific plugin for each of those over here, a template for specifically those. Okay. But again, what we most importantly use every single day in an organization is the advanced scan. Okay, so you run an offline scan to figure out what systems contain what vulnerabilities. And the main important aspect of today's class is understanding how do you configure that scan today. Okay, so let's get into the configuration part now. So firstly, you have to give the name for the scan type. So basically, the name in organizations is given by the date of the scan. So today is 3rd of July, 3rd July or 3/7/2024. You also mention what department you're scanning in that organization. So let's say I'm scanning my home network. Okay. In real time, you might give the organization's name here. Okay. And the description to describe what the scan is used for. So whenever someone looks at a report, they get to know what the scan was initiated for. So scanning my local network for 3 devices, let's say. One, my Windows 7, then my Windows 11, and then my Metasploit. So these are the 3 devices I want to scan today. And now, if you want, you can create a new folder here and keep the scan in that certain folder, or leave it at the default My Scans folder itself. And you specify the target IPs now. So right now in my network, my Windows 7 is running on the IP of 0.6. My Metasploitable is running on 0.4, and my base machine is running on 0.5. Okay, so 4, 5, 6, 3 devices. So now I can either mention them individually here one by one, 192.168.0.4, comma 0.5, comma 0.6. So you have to see to it that you don't make any typo errors here. If you do so, that IP will not get scanned. So you can either mention the range, the list of IPs like this, or you can mention a sequence as well, one hyphen 5, or you can mention the entire range /24. Okay, or you can also mention a domain name as well, test.com. Okay, so I'll mention each IP individually here, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6. Okay, and now you can just click on save. Now in the advanced tool, you can also generate a schedule as well. So if you click on schedule here, you can see if you enable this, you can run the scan every day or every week or every month or every year. You can repeat the same scan. But this is now only available in the pro version, as you can notice. Okay, so I won't be initiating any schedule here. Okay. Notifications, if you want to get this over the email as a report, okay, you can give the email address here. Right now, I don't want to send it to any email address as such. I would just want to get the report here itself. Okay, so I'll just click on save, and now I click on launch. And when I click on launch here, this initiates the scan and adds all the 3 devices here one by one. So let's wait for that. Again, nothing further, guys. In a real-time organization as well, you would initiate the scan and let the tool do its job. And depending on the number of devices available, it would take that longer. Okay, since I've added 3 devices here, as you can see, all the 3 of them have been added, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and this usually takes around 5 to 10 minutes for each device, guys. So for 3 devices now, it might take 30 minutes or so. Okay, and once the scan is done, all the vulnerabilities are categorized in 5 levels here. There's information-based vulnerabilities, low vulnerabilities, medium, high, and critical. In a real-time organization, you should never have any critical, high, or medium vulnerabilities. If they do exist, it means the system is at high cyber security risk or a cyber risk. Okay. High, medium, and critical allow hackers to get remote connections or to perform DOS attacks also. Okay. Information and low are not those that severe. Information ones give you some crucial information about the system, which should not have been leaked by default, and low are for misconfigurations, having outdated services or running unnecessary ports or services. Okay, all those fall under information and low. Medium, high, and critical allow attackers to give you remote connection to the servers or shut down the servers. Okay, or perform DOS attacks as well. Okay, so as you can see, it's still at 4% and 6% for each system. And this is going to take a while, guys. So again, that is all about running an Nessus scan. Okay, how do you install it and how do you initiate it? In real time as well, penetration testers run the scan, let it run for the entire day or for the entire week, entire night. And the next day, they go through the report and perform vulnerability assessment. So this tool now, once it is done scanning, it gives you a report, basically elaborating every single vulnerability. So if you notice over here, when I click on any one of these devices, there's multiple vulnerabilities here. And whichever vulnerability I open now over here, you can see there's a description for the vulnerability, there's a solution for it, and there's an output for that vulnerability as well. Okay, so if I check this one right now, so on the system 0.4, there's a critical vulnerability here called NFS exported share information disclosure. That's the name for the vulnerability. To understand what that is, we can read the description here. So it says one of the shares of NFS service exported by the server could be mounted by scanning the host, and an attacker may be able to leverage this to read and possibly write files on remote host. So what it says is there's this service called NFS, and it is giving hackers the chance to mount the server's folders and access and all the folders as well. Now the hackers can write data, which means modify the data, and read the data on the system, okay, without any proper authentication. Solution for this, we need to configure NFS with authorization. We need to establish usernames and passwords is what it says. Okay, and this is the output. So on the output, you can see the hacker has complete remote connection and he's able to access all these folders on the system. Now, in order to attack on this, you have to look at this column here, exploitable with. So again, for every vulnerability which has an exploitable feature, which means which you can attack on, it will show you what tool can you use to attack on it. And here it shows Metasploit. So this is one of the most important tools I will be using in the next class, guys, called Metasploit framework. So this is a vulnerability assessment tool. Now, what do I mean by vulnerability assessment is whatever vulnerabilities are shown through the vulnerability scanning tool, you assess them. You try to manually verify them by attacking on those vulnerabilities. So that is called as VAPT, vulnerability assessment by penetration testing. You test the security of the system or the vulnerability by penetrating or attacking on it. Okay, hence VAPT. And for that, we need this tool called Metasploit. So this tool is capable of downloading all the exploits available and attacking on those vulnerabilities. Okay, so as you can see over here, it says exploits are available and you can attack it with Metasploit framework. Okay, so if you search for this exploit, you can just go to your browser, and if you scroll down, you can see there are CVE IDs here. So when I click on these IDs, this shows much more details about the vulnerability. Okay, so every vulnerability has a unique ID as such, as you can notice. Okay, and this gives you the links to learn more about them. Okay, and if I want the exploit available for it, I can just copy this exploitable with. You can copy that data there. Open up a new tab, search for exploit B, and it shows exploit available. Okay, so this is the code that hackers would use to attack that system, and we're going to use this code in the Metasploit framework in the upcoming sessions. Okay, so again, that's what vulnerability assessment is about, guys. Finding the correct exploit with it and using that to attack the system on the vulnerability shown in the Nessus tool. Okay, works the exact same way for any other vulnerability as well. So if I go back one step, if I go to another system, let's say 0.6, you can see this is my Windows 7 system. Okay, and there's one more vulnerability here, MS17010. Okay, so this is a MS vulnerability, Microsoft vulnerability, released in the year 2017, and the 10th vulnerability in that year. Okay, and this is affecting something called the SMB server. Okay, so multiple remote code execution vulnerabilities exist on the SMB servers, and hackers can exploit this to create again to execute arbitrary code. Arbitrary code in sense, remotely hackers can execute any code of their choice on the system. Scroll down much further, you can see exploitable with Metasploit framework, and exploits are available. And to get that exploit again, copy the entire name from here, open up a new tab, search for exploit DB, and you can see I've got the exploits available here again. Okay, so in the upcoming sessions, we're going to learn how do you download this exploit in the Kali system, how do you use it to attack the system on those vulnerabilities, okay, and how do you get the remote connection to execute any code. So that's all about Nessus, guys. Nothing further for our session today. All you have to do is wait for the tool to do its job, get you the report for all the 3 devices, and once the report is ready, it should show 100% everywhere. Okay, so it'll show you a cross mark everywhere. And once that is done, in the upcoming sessions, I'll show you how to generate a report and perform pen testing with it. Okay, is that clear? Any questions? Wahab, Charles, Ben. A simple session understanding how do you initiate or configure a scan in Nessus to initiate vulnerability scanning. Once that is done, we generate a report tomorrow and work with that report to perform penetration testing to attack on those vulnerabilities. Okay, today we're just letting this tool again, this automated tool to give you the results of vulnerabilities by default dynamically. Yeah, Charles, any questions? Your mic is unmuted.
Oh, no questions, no questions. Since you're already done with the class, I was hoping if you could share both recordings to us. I was expecting yesterday, but it never came. So,
Oh, 1 second, Charles. I forgot to share. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I'm gonna share the recording today, Charles. I couldn't share
yeah,
yesterday.
if you
I'll
could
share it
share
today.
both with us, we'll be grateful so that we just
I
follow and then we
I
can
will.
go
I
from
will. I
there.
will. I'll share right away after the class. Sure.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, that's that. Nothing further. Again, we just let the tool do its job, guys. And tomorrow we're gonna go through this report and we'll perform pen testing. We'll perform manual attacks on these vulnerabilities. Okay. Bye bye. Good day. See you tomorrow at the same time.